Hey everybody, welcome to the next tutorial lesson. In this one, we're going to be making a TIE fighter in Blender with just geometry nodes. I'm going to pull up my PureRef board and let's see, I'll just go ahead and load something recent. This should be it. Here we go. So we're going to make something that looks almost exactly like this. It's going to be hyper precise, like geometry nodes are. We're not going to use Ren and Stimpy over here. I know you guys were seeing that. You're like, I want a lightsaber scene. No, I'm not doing that. But this guy next to his brand new whip, I mean, that's snatched. That's really nice. So anyways, this is my model. This is what I'm going with, my reference image. I'm just going to keep it in PureRef. You can go to pureref.com and pick up PureRef. You can put in a custom price as 0 and get it free, but it's probably a nice idea. So if you jumped over to pureref.com, you can see Windows, Mac, Linux, PureRef. Check out, and they suggest $3. You can put 0.0 and it accepts it. But it's nice, you know, help them out. All right, first thing we do is drop in a cube. Just scale it down into some kind of like very tiny setup here, scaling it on the Y. I just want to make a stick, basically. Let's see, I think a stick about like that looks good. So okay, jump into edit mode, face select. I'll take the top view so I know what I'm grabbing. And I'm not in object mode like I want to be. So I'll grab this and then Control 7. And I'll shift right click here, double tap I to bring in that inset, and I think that's pretty good. Alright, so back to top view, maybe hit 1 so I can kind of know where I'm at. I'll grab these individual faces and I'm going to extrude them along normals. Could be kind of fat, look pretty decent, something like that. Alright, now for some more fun, we can do is grab the outside edges and I will scale those on the Z. Be careful of shading errors. If you go too far, you'll see it starts flipping and looking crazy, but something like that looks nice. Now I can go ahead into edge select. I'll grab this bad boy edge here, top and bottom, and I can scale that down on the Z, or I can hit Control B and offer a slick little bevel, if you will. And then, kind of, let's see, I'm probably Y positive, so I'm going to symmetrize. And I will go from like X positive to X negative. And it really didn't like that. X negative to X positive. And I swear I make this mistake every time. You have to select all, and then go symmetrize. And then X positive, X negative. Actually, I'd go backwards, but if you go that way, it's fine. You might have to experiment with a little bit, kind of get used to it. It's hard to remember because we don't use that stuff that much. This looks nice, so I'll scale this down a touch. I'm going to apply the scale, G and X, and I'm just going to move that over into an arbitrary area. Now we can Shift A, drop in a cube. I'll scale it down just for the viewport purposes. I'll apply the scale. I'm going to go ahead and split my screen with a horizontal split. Jump into the geometry nodes editor. Press N to get rid of that if you don't want it. I'll click new. I'll Control right/click. Remove that bad boy out of there. And if you don't have Node Wrangler enabled, go to Edit, Preferences. Go into Add-ons, type in the word Node. Check on Node Arrange, Presets, Wrangler. Node Wrangler is mainly what we're going to be using. And so with this setup like this, we want to drop something in. So I'm going to go Shift A and I'm going to go into the curve primitives and I want a curve circle. I'll drop that in and I can go ahead and connect it. I don't like the resolution there, so if you come over and look, this is what we're after. This right here, the stop sign looking design. So let's come in and go from the resolution of 32, and let me make sure you guys can see what's going on. 32 to 6. And voila, we've got it. Now we can't move this around in here properly. We want to do it in here and use math. So I'm going to put in a transform node. I'm going to go to the x-axis, push 90, not 90 bracket, but 90, and all right, I meant to click the rotation. Fun of it, I'm leaving mistakes in here because you guys are going to make them. So rotation x 90, boom. So that's super simple, right? We've got something very easy, and it's the exact same shape. So we'll be working from this angle. So now what we want to do is let's kind of like pull all this stuff apart, and I want to instance this geometry, our little stick, and I'm just going to call this spine because that's basically what it is. So I've now renamed that spine, not cubes 0.002, which still exists, but we're not using it. So we could like remove it from the viewport. Okay, so what we want to do is go back to cube 002, which really isn't showing. Let me not do that just in case. Okay, so I was trying to get rid of the cube, but you know what? In my practice doing this, I didn't do that, so I was just trying to be fancy. Didn't work out. So now what I want to do is add in instance on points, and I'll put that down here just below my transform. I can plug the curve directly into the instance. I'll bring this over, put in a join geometry, and I will join the instances on points here. There's nothing attached to it, but I'm going to need to do that. So I'll bring the spine out. I can plug in the geometry to the instances here, and then they kind of start like laying out really funky. But we want to instance this on the actual points, and the way we're going to do that is through using the normals, which are attached to this. So if I go to overlays, and I've got to grab this and jump into edit, I'll turn on the normals, and we'll see the cube kind of pop up. Now we're not going to have these faces, okay? I've adopted the circle, so from each one of these points, and let me just like get all annotated. Each one of these points I'm going to be instancing, and my normals are currently going out this way, and that's what I want. And then I want to use the transform node, right, to like bring these inside of the circle, so they look something like that, and they look nice. Now that's 3D space, so whatever, it doesn't look too good, but I'll remove all that and we can continue. Now you may have used a rotate Euler on vector with some very famous tutorials out there, but we're going to use and align Euler to vector. This is a completely kick butt node. I love it. Drop in the normals because that's what we're trying to fetch, if you will, so we can plug this in. Now all you have to do is plug the normal into the vector because it's 3 points that we're going for, which we're going for the vectors, we're going for the points. And I want to take the rotation, and I'll plug it into the rotation. And now we get them all pointed out in the correct way. But once again, they're not necessarily facing the right way. So I'm going to bring this instance on points over here. I'm not really doing much else with it, so I'm going to Shift D this, and I can drop that in, and it should have the exact same alignment, and voila. And we'll have to like pretty this up a little bit, but it's going to be very easy to bring that in. So let's go ahead and begin that little process. So what we can do is get into the scale, and we don't really need to see too much of this. And let's kind of play around with this around like 0.6, 0.6, and that kind of puts us inside of our stop sign. I'm just very generic. You guys just have to get used to that. And from here, you can take the object, scale it on X, which is the idea. Control A and apply the scale. And I'll just hit G and X to kind of move that off a little bit more. So that way we get a little bit closer. And what we want to do is line this up so it's perfectly lined up inside. And I'll just grab this and scale it back down just a touch, and then I will apply the scale. And that's super close. Okay, so I'm really not going to mess with that anymore for now. But what I do want to do is I'll take this entire node group. I'm going to stop flipping the screen around, probably drive everybody crazy. I'm going to take this entire node group. I'll hit S to kind of scale it down a little bit. Shift D. I'm going to bring it down. And then I'll bring my join geometry over here, which is... I didn't mean to copy that one. So delete that join geometry and then bring the other two up and plug them in. So now we have two of these. Unfortunately, the exact same size and everything else. So we're going to have to like adjust them. And so for the translation of the curved circle, the first one, we can move this. It looks like on the Y. Seems pretty good. So I'll put this one to 1. And then I'll grab the second transform, which would be my instances, on the Y and put 1. Then I'm going to come down to the next pack here. And I'll grab this transform on Y and put -1. And then I'll come down to the next one here and -1 as well. So now we're pretty well set up with our framing, right? So this looks pretty good. Let me kind of like clean this up and put it in a spot where everybody can kind of see it. I want this to be like clean and obvious how the setup goes, and it just repeats. So it's really nothing too special. There we go. So everything's lined up. So you really just need to see one of these. So you got a curved circle, transforming it in its position and its rotation. From the same curve, you're instancing on points. You're rotating the instances on the normals with an aligned Euler to vector on the x-axis. Pretty simple. You bring your object info in and instance that. Then you tie these two transforms into a join, copy everything, and do it again down here with the little offset I just showed you. So anyways, that's pretty easy. Now what I want to do is not grab the join this time. I'll grab all this. I'll hit Control G and I'll tab so I can tab in and out of this mode. Now the join can go right there. This node group can kind of stay where it's at. I will come over. I'll press N. I'll go to the node. Let's see. I'll go down to the group. I'll select. Okay, here it is. So you have to tab back in, and then you'll see under group all these different groups, and this doesn't make any sense. You just say geometry, 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 geometry. It's not good. So what I can do is I can come into the first transform, and those are what I'm relabeling. I'll grab the name and I can call it, let's see, let's just call it circle transform circle T1. Alright, I'll hit enter. I'll come to the second one and I'll put in circle I for instances. I'll just type out instances, circle instances 1, and hit enter. And then I can just like rinse and repeat down here and put in circle transform 2, and then come down and put in circle instances 2. And that will keep things like straight. If you want to look at this and go, I need to pull off of this or pull off of this, great. So now we've got our mesh in here, if you will. We've got our geometry, and that's a little bit of an eyesore. So let's just kind of pull that out a little bit. So what we've got is the border, or rather this piece, the shaft. And I think you'll really appreciate how this ends up. So Shift A, mesh primitives, cylinder, drop it in, connect it to the join. Now what we can do is put in a transform node, let's change this, see which one it's going to go on. I always do the translation. So I go on the rotation here, so not the Y, but the X at 90. Now we want to come over to the cylinder controls here. We don't want to try to do this over there. And we can bring this down to something that like matches our spine pieces. And I think I nailed it pretty good on the first try. So 0.2 worked good for me. Don't worry about it looking like a shaft. Once we apply these geometry nodes, we're actually going to do a very quick amount of modeling. I'll just show you a couple of tips and then it's all on you. Don't worry about the fins, the inside piece, these panels. Can do that later after we apply the nodes, and it's going to be a lot easier to do it that way. Anyway, so I'll press N to get rid of that, so we've got a little bit more space. Now, what else do I want to do? I want to go back to Mesh Primitives, and I want to put the UV sphere in. UV sphere is going to be something that looks like this, and we're going to modify it to look a little different. You can go Exactola if you want. I'm going to take artistic license on that front because that's not something I want to try to fit into the tutorial. And so I'll just grab this UV and put it in the join geometry. I'll copy my transform, drop it down, and so now I can start working with this. I'll bring it to 0.5 on the radius for now. I want to put in a capture attribute, like right there. And I want to switch this from float to vector and point to, let's see, we could go to edges. And now I want to like make a little bit of room here, so I'll bring this join over. I'm going to put in extrude mesh right here. It's going to look nice and crazy. I'll put this to like 1.25 and I'll plug the attribute into the offset, and I actually want to go from edge to face and kind of see how this looks. Now let's see, which one of these values do I want? Is this like XYZ? Yeah, so X looks pretty good. I'll go to like 0.2 and hit enter. So just want to extrude this out just a little bit. Actually, I'll switch that to -0.1. That way I can kind of get that where I want it. There we go. That looks a lot better. And now let's see. Do I like the extrusion where it is? So do something like that. Okay, it's starting to look pretty good. So now I want this, and this is the part I'm taking the artistic license on. I want this to look cool in the front. So I'll do something to it. And I think we'll just control it from the UV. And let's go down to something like 5 rings. Okay, get a little reaction there. I like that. And let's bring this to 8. Ooh, looking pretty cool. And so you could play with the radius and the rings and kind of get what you want. I'm thinking 3. It's going to look pretty good. And I really like how this looks because I'm going to make these into windows, because I think that's kind of how that works with the TIE fighters. They've got these like multiple windows so you can see everything you're shooting, but mine's going to be an upgrade because you can have a better field of view. So like if you were shooting, you're now seeing that. Like, this is totally pointless, but I have nothing better to do in this tutorial. So my field of view is now here and here, when before it was here and here. That's terrible, right? Could upgrade that. So this is an upgraded version. Alright, so now we can do, and everything's actually looking pretty good. This is very smooth, very simple model. Alright, that's, yeah, okay, so let's go ahead and we'll output some stuff. If you want to, you can do this. So I'll go back to the output, and if by chance you wanted to make some of these an output, then it should be pretty easy. And so what you can do is you can bring in anything you wish. If you want to bring in the spline object, go over here, and then because this has already made a group, you won't see anything popped up. So if you come over here, you'll actually see it, and you can control it outside of the node groups. You can add a number of things in here if you wish. And to get that to come all the way out, you're going to have to tag it into the secondary as well. That's going to be a big pain, so I'm really only going to do that with something like the resolution and the radius, just as an example. And then if you want to bring these out, you can do the same. Very easy. And now you'll have the controls over some of this. You can bring this up and make it look really, really crazy if you want, and kind of match it and go a little bit more artistic. So I know there's got to be somebody out there that can actually figure out some of the smaller details a little bit, like on your own. You just have your fun with it. Okay, so one thing to note, I'll go back into the group. This is a circle curve. Okay, so it's never going to show up if I click here and click apply. Everything disappears. So I'm going to Control Z back. And one of those things you're going to want to do, let me get this all situated, is come in here and make this a curve to mesh. Okay, and that's for the first one. For the second one, on the second one where the instances are, you're going to have to put a realize instances. If you don't do that, none of this is going to show up. So I'll take my curve to mesh, I'll Shift D, I'll bring it down, and I'm going to put it in front of the transform because it doesn't matter. But the realize instances do need to be at the end. And so I'll realize all of this. So if I was to like create a nice little save point and then apply, so create a save point, but maybe even name it something else. So kind of like come in here and click save as and do, oh, I don't know, just another name that's not the same. And then you've got something to work with. So you can come in here and play with this, and if you screw it up, you're good. All right, so I can go ahead and join this area because now I'm just working with this one piece of mesh. I'm going to jump into edit mode, and for crying out loud, I'm going to turn off my overlays because that was fun. Make sure I'm on edge select, and I'll select this outside loop, and I'll hit F to fill it. And that's the big trick right there. You can do an extrusion if you wish. Now, one of those things I did notice, if I go to face select, is I got like this bleed over here. And so I'm going to have to like maybe hide that, grab this face, hit X, and delete the face, and then Alt H. However you can do it to select it. Sometimes it'll just select it. There we go. See, it selected this one. And delete those faces. And then I'll just resave that because I don't want to like have to go back and do any more. All right, loop cuts. This is its own piece right here. So you can still put a loop cut in. Super cool. I'm just going to bring these over and, you know, like individually place them. And of course you can symmetrize. You don't have to do it that way. And I'll put 3 just to pull this in. And I can scale this to where like it doesn't cause too many problems, hopefully. A for all, symmetrize, and you can always get to the symmetrize menu by searching and typing in SYM mesh symmetrize. And if you come down here, you've always got this drop down menu. It looks like I'm on the Y, and I need to go Y positive to Y negative. Yeah, that's what it looks like. You'll figure all this stuff out later, everybody. Now, the fun thing, go back to face select, if I can figure it out, and I will separate selection. And that also is in the search. Type in separate by selection. Right click it, add it to favorites, hit Q anytime you want. You can separate stuff. Now you have to jump out of edit mode and individually grab this. So I'll go over to rendered view actually. Let's see, what do we look like? Scene world. Looks like a disaster, so I'll put on scene lights because I'm going to do something funky. And I'll just add a new material. Whoa, material tab. I'll add a material, come into the principled. I want to just do a mixed shader, very basic. I'll grab the glass BSDF. I'll grab a transparent, not a translucent. I really wish that wasn't in the same thing. Like they could put Z hyphen translucent or something in that, so it's like off to the side and nobody screws that up. I'll put this at like 0.9 for now. 0.8 is a factor in the Blender manual that says it's actually pretty accurate. So you could go with that, do whatever you want with it. And I got a lot of like funky stuff going on here. Okay, no big deal. And I'm actually going to switch over to Eevee so everybody can do this and have like a good result. Little trick, go in the Material tab, come all the way down to Viewport Display. Go from Blend Mode, Opaque, to Alpha Hashed. And now you've got Eevee glass, and you can kind of like mess, not with the metallic, you can mess with the roughness, like a little bit. And the IOR, let's see if that changes at 1.3. Something neat. And I can still see this in here. So like if I was actually, I hit H to hide that. If I was doing this straight up, I would put in like a loop cut here and maybe go to face select and select all these and delete these faces and go to edge select. And you can do this a lot cleaner way, like closer, and hit F to fill. And then do like maybe grab this and hit G and X. That's not going to work because it's one mesh. Man, I was really trying. So I could put a loop cut in here and cut all this off. Go back to face select, X, face off, back to edge select. I hope this isn't confusing anybody. Hit F to fill. And now I've got like an area in here I can model, and it doesn't look too crazy, and I can put my glass back, and now you don't see all that crap, right? You could put all kind of stuff in there and model it out. Anyways, guys, really appreciate you watching. This is all I'm going to do, but I will take this into Philogix PBR Painter Pro, which you can find a link in the description. It's amazing, and it will shade this, it will bake this, you can do ID maps, the whole bit. You can put some really cool stuff on it. So I'm going to paint it and, you know, kind of put out my little artistic license TIE fighter here. So I mean, it's not perfect, but I'd say that's pretty darn close, and it looks really cool, and I like mine a lot better anyways because you've got a better field of view. So I just put this like very basic color here. What am I doing with the subsurface here? Put this very basic color in here, maybe go completely black. You could jump over into shading if you don't want to go and buy Philogix PBR. I could bring this out, put in like a color ramp, and I know I already said goodbye, but that doesn't mean anything with me because I am ready to talk. So I'll put in a gradient texture here. I'll pull this out, and what do I want? I want a mapping node. Vector, I'll take this vector, put in COR for texture coordinate. I'll go from object to vector because that's how I'm going to want it to be. And now I've got this neat little gradient on here. And the cool thing is you can actually use that for shading, man. You could do a ton of different things with that. Anyhow, you can add a bunch of different colors, change them up, go for ease, put the distribute stops from left, and make some really cool stuff. Let's see, I don't want the black in there at all. I think I could benefit from doing this like two-tone crazy thing. And then from here you can pull out the location, put in a noise factor, wait for that to kind of load up, and then you get this sick paint job, right? So I mean, if you could learn nodes, you don't have to buy anything, but excuse me, all you really want to do is just kind of play around with this. Then geometry, texture nodes are really easy. I can take the normals, pull this off, put in a bump, normal, and then I can grab this noise factor to height, and I should be able to bring, let's see, how do I want to do this? Go object to normal and tie it all in until I get this like really crazy pattern. This could end up being some kind of like space camouflage. Scale to 10 usually looks pretty good. And then from here you can play with this scale and like shift this around, and you can even animate some of this. If you wanted to go into 4D, go to W, type in hashtag frame/100, pull up a little timeline here, and if I go in and hit play, and I've got this really crazy thing, and this could be going through a scene. And there's the new animation nodes too, so I'm going to go over some of that, but like just vanilla Blender just the way it is pretty psyched. So I really enjoyed thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next tutorial lesson. And there's your EV glass.